Welcome to another episode of the Happy Hour. I'm your host, Dr. Elia, and as we do every week, we bring amazing guests who have overcome a lot, have shown tremendous resilience, and if there's anyone that exemplifies that to a T, is this young man, Anthony Trucks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You have an incredible story to tell from foster care to playing football for the Oregon Ducks. Pac-12. I was a UCLA graduate, so we were Oregon, UCLA, we were always classic, but you did better than we did. And then making it to the NFL, a dream come true, right? And then things happened. So you talk a lot about making shift happen, and if you take out the F, you see what happens, right? And you also talk a lot about to overcome a lot of these things, you got to do what you call the dark work. So we're going to get to that as well. You're an incredible speaker. You make a difference in thousands of people's lives, and you've created quite a life for yourself and your family. But let's start at the beginning. Tell our audience a little bit about the early part of your life and from how to get to the NFL. It's quite a story.
Yeah, it's a long one, man. It's a lot happens. NFL's a good journey. There's a whole lot of things that went, led to that point. But like you mentioned, I was given away as a kid at 3 years old in the foster care system, and this is 1986, so it's not like there's much, social media videos and that kind of stuff. So a lot of things are going on behind the scenes people are not aware of, and it just isn't good. I was getting beaten and starved and tortured in some of these houses, and it was a kind of uncomfortable situation, and you spend a lot of your life trying to figure out how to live from a place like that. But at that age, like that was, it was wiring me at a certain point to be aware that I didn't matter to my own mom. The people that were supposed to take care of me, they didn't take care of me. I was what's called a paycheck, which means as long as I don't die in that home, they get a paycheck for me being there. And so I just had to deal with that for 3 years, and I bounced around into 6 different homes. In my sixth home, which is my current home, the dynamic was a little bit different in a sense of we were very poor. I was also the only black person in now all white family. So not only did I, not fit in because I wasn't the actual blood kid, but I also didn't look the same. I come from a different background. And so I always had this lingering sense of like, gosh, what's wrong with me? Where do I fit? How do I get a sense of self? And so I was with this family from the age of essentially 6 to 14 before I got adopted by them. And I wasn't able to be adopted for 8 years because my biological mom, she is in the background and has what's called parental rights. Parental rights are the rights you have to make decisions about the child, even though you don't live there, which is very weird, right? It's to go like, well, my mom who didn't, keep me, she gave me away in the first place. She is the one that's controlling things I can and can't do, i.e. sports or trips or any kind of things that most kids at a young age want to go do, couldn't go do it. And so I eventually at 14 years old was able to step into a courtroom in front of my mom, in front of my, soon to be adoptive family and look my mom in her eyes and say, I no longer want you to be my mom anymore. And it severed parental rights. And in doing so, it freed me up to finally get adopted. So I got adopted and I got to
Anthony,
go to
where did you grow up? Like what state, what city? Where were you?
Yeah. So the town is called Antioch, California.
Up
It's
north.
in
Up north.
it's
Yes.
out west northish. Yeah. So we're in Northern California for sure. And it's not the best city anymore. I think it's kind of a little bit downtrodden, unfortunately. But yeah, I grew up in the East Bay area, and then that was the situation where I got adopted and I could go do something new. And I think we all have moments in time we try something new, right? It's like this idea of what could be if this thing takes place. And so for me, it was going to be this thing. I'm going to try this game of football. And football for me was super exciting at the opportunity because I'd done it in recess. I was real good in recess, right? And then I got to the football field where I have, teammates with helmets and shoulder pads, and I sucked. I was real bad. But I'd love
I
this
found that
idea.
hard to believe. There's no way you got to the
No.
NFL if that. That's not.
No, yeah. I mean, when
Yeah.
you think about it, I started playing at the age of 14. When you get to the age of 14, like just a year before high school,
Oh, sure.
most of the
Late.
kids,
Yeah.
they've been playing for 4 or 5, 6 years. So I'm way behind the ball for a lot of these kids. And so I finally get out there and I'm trying to figure out how the game works. And, there's a lot of little dynamics, but I leaned in. And usually you have the option when you find out you suck at something to do one of two things. Well, option one is you quit. What a lot of people do because it's too hard. I don't know how this thing works out. So you quit and you make really good excuses to quit, but you still quit. Or you go, I'm going to find out how to get better at this. I'm going to give the energy, I'm going to give the effort, I'm going to do what it takes to get better. And it's usually a very hard fought journey. And so for me, I
I
was
love
in
the
a
words I
situation.
leaned in. I think that's lesson number one for our audience.
Yeah,
Yeah, I leaned in.
good.
I can quit or I can lean in. And these are only the two choices that we have. So, and by the way, what
Yeah.
position did you? I'm a huge football fan. What position did you?
Yeah. I played when high school receiver and linebacker, college and beyond was always linebacker.
Wow. You got
So
to hit
I
some people.
that's all I did, man. Last name's Trucks. Had to find a way to do it, right? It worked out. But oh yeah, then we did the whole
Okay, so
football
high
thing.
school. So you begin at some
Yeah.
point. The coaches begin to keep their eye on you because you're
They
improving.
do. Well, yes and no. It wasn't that I was improving my first year. Second year is when I spent some time in the off season, which is where dark work came from. I found myself in a situation going, I have a choice. I can go ahead and chalk it up, or I can lean in, like we talked about. The lean in thing, though, it usually presents you with information of tasks that you must complete, things you must do, habits you must build that are
Mm.
not who you are to do just yet. Like it's not who you are to maybe lift the weights or run the routes. It's not who you are to make those videos and edit those things. Maybe it's not who you are to launch that podcast. But if that becomes the common thought process, then it'll never become who you are. And so for me, I go, well, I got to do things that football players do, even though I don't do them right now. And so I started doing things. And you
Like for
have,
example, like what kind of stuff?
yeah. So for example, I come from this family where there's no athletes, it's just me. And so the idea of like lifting weights, running routes, catching footballs every single day, they're like, what are you doing? Like, stop doing that. It's weird, right? But for me, I go, well, that's what all the players that I want to be like are doing. This is what the Jerry
Mm.
Rice of the world are doing. You know, it's like the great athletes. And so I started doing those things. And at first, you actually have two big, I find like, drags, two things that pull you back. One is going to be the thought internally that you have that goes, this is not who you are. What are you doing? You suck. You should stop this. You're making a fool of yourself, right?
The
Because
inner
that's the
critic.
internal voice,
Yeah, the
always.
inner critic. Yep.
The other side, you have other people who you are now stepping outside the bounds of what they know you to be.
Mm.
They've seen you as a certain thing. And so, and what they'll do is they'll try to put you back in the box nicely. They'll be like, oh, don't embarrass yourself. Like, oh, that's not who you are. Like, oh, we don't do that. Right. And so you now have outside external, kind of sources that start telling you things about why you shouldn't do the podcast or create videos or be a speaker or all these different things. Right. And they do it sometimes in love to save your feelings. But the reality is it becomes an opposition. So when you have the internal voice and external voices both against you, it's hard. And so what you have to do is not identify with the outcome you're seeking to get. You identify with the effort and you do the damn work. So for me, I showed up the next year after 7 months of crazy off-season work with this different kind of animal inside. And the mentality I live with now is I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light,
I love
which
that.
is it's just
Mm.
built around the idea that when I get to defining moments and it's me versus whatever the opposition is, I need to have an internal compass that goes, you have nothing as another option but to win. You've done too much preparation, too much work. You've read too much, created too much. There's no way you lose this. You only get that level of a confidence if you've done the work in the dark.
You got to do
And
the
so
work. Yep.
that's where the whole idea of dark work came to be for me. Now when I'm 15 years old, I don't know this as much. This is all like obviously looking back on my life,
Of
understanding a
course.
lot of what took place. But I ended up playing my sophomore year. I killed it. Got moved to varsity. Got a scholarship to play football at the University of Oregon, like you mentioned. And so like that took off to a whole new direction. But then I had to find a way to start in college because in college back when I was playing, there wasn't NIL. There was no transfer portal. I
Nothing.
couldn't decide I wanted to leave. If I was going to play, I was going to have to beat another man out for a job. And and again, you go to a situation where like there's guys that are 5 years ahead of you. That's not your job. That's their job, right? And so if you want the job, you got to find ways to do things that are not comfortable, not normal, that don't feel like you to get the job. And so I played my true freshman year, didn't take any time, no red shirt. And then my true sophomore year, I went and battled for a starting job. And sure enough, I got the job over a fifth year senior. And it's because
Wow.
I
Congratulations. Wow.
thank you. I dove in. It's a Division I program, University of Oregon. So like it wasn't just a bunch of schmucks. There's
No, no,
ballers
no.
out there. And it was just an idea of like the things that you do in the dark or what forces you to make it right. Like I'm not gonna do all this work behind the scenes, like really crazy good work, and then come up and just let it all slip through my fingers. And whenever I found that people go, well, it just doesn't work. I did my best. It didn't work out. Like I find that those individuals didn't actually give it their all in the moments. They say they did. They go like, I worked real hard for this. If you worked real hard for this, you would be disgusted at the sight of you losing. Like there's a different when I'm talking pushed myself extra in the workouts, ran more in the different distances, read more books, written more blogs and articles, when I've filmed more videos in my world, when I've recorded more podcasts. When you've done that day after day and you've done it consistently, you don't allow yourself to lose. You don't allow yourself to do anything short of what your expected level is for yourself, your standard. And so for me, I didn't know, but like at this time in my life, I was kind of doing that. Did it in high school, did it in college, was blessed to play in the NFL.
Yeah, at what point
Yeah.
in you're a Duck, you're starting now as a
Yeah.
linebacker, do you begin to have the secret dream like, man, maybe I can get drafted, maybe I can play in the NFL? Because at some point that
Ah,
thought must have crossed your mind. It's like, man, I can be
yeah. Junior year of college. Prior to that, I didn't have any thoughts of the NFL. Like I didn't grow up in a space of like nobody in our area goes to the NFL. Wasn't a
right.
thing. But yeah, it was probably right around junior year when I had some of my coaches said like, hey, you looking like an agent. I'm like, for what? Like for the NFL. I'm like, oh, I can do that. They're like, yeah, man. So it became definitely a conversation around that time frame. Prior to that, for me, it was just I'm a foster kid. I hope I have a decent life. I hope things are okay. Like I didn't want to, be hungry and kind of out of my butt. So it wasn't this thing where I was consistently like thinking about NFL every day. But once I had that locked in, I did realize that more work had to be done. There's more that had to be done behind the scenes, same way. So when I got to the football field, I wasn't out there just kind of taking up space, but actually competing to be able to be on the team. And so I did the same stuff, man. I got to the point of getting, to play for three different teams. It was always a battle, man, because the NFL is difficult because there's too many guys and not a lot of jobs, a lot of competition. Politics, crazy. But I got
Which teams did you
hurt.
play for?
The Buccaneers, the Redskins at the time, and then the Steelers.
Wow. That's great
Yeah,
franchises,
it
all
was a
three of
good
them.
run.
Yeah.
And then tore my shoulder playing with the Steelers against the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was the end of the season and eventually end of my career. I haven't played since August 8th, 2008.
So you were like around 25 years old, more or less.
Yeah, right around. Yeah,
So most 25 years old, they have a dream. The dream ends at 25. That's not normal. Most people have dreams that last, they're going to their 40s, 50s, 60s. They have a life, enough.
yeah.
But the NFL and, careers can be cut short just like yours. What happened to
Immediately.
you when you realized, man, I think I'm done playing professionally and getting paid the money and the
Oh
fame, the
man.
fortune, all that stuff? I mean, that you're at the top. I mean, there's nothing greater than the
Yeah.
NFL. So
Yeah, I
you were
cried for
thinking,
sure, man. It's difficult because it's an ego death, It's part of you dies. The part of you that you've been building for me, 13 years of my life, and all of a sudden I can no longer do this thing that I've literally lived and breathed for years. And
right,
it's a
right.
heavy thing. And the thing is, a lot of people, you can have the same feeling if maybe had a business you sold, or you left the military, or you sent a kid to college, or empty nesting. Whenever there's changes to your day to day consistency, you feel it, and you don't feel the same. Like you feel like
You're
almost
kind of
worthless
lost
at
actually
times.
in a lot of ways. I feel like when major shifts happen in life like that, there's an initial time of adjustment,
Yeah.
and sometimes you feel totally lost. You're like, what am I going to do now with the rest of my life? And there's a lot
Hmm.
of big questions to ask and answer. So
Yeah.
I guess
Always
what
is.
happened after that? Okay.
I mean, I came home, had to navigate who is Anthony without football. I didn't know. And so I have a degree in kinesiology. So I'm going to go open a gym, do fitness stuff that, novel idea for an athlete. So I go do that. And then I start to learn about the business world. I start to learn about myself. My marriage falls apart, which wasn't a good thing. Ended up getting divorced. And, I have three kids with this woman. And so just, life got heavy there because now you're dealing with divorce and a business that's not doing very well. I wasn't good in business in the beginning. I was trying to navigate these things. And little by little, man, year after year, for like 6 years, I started getting better and better at the business side. Went from being almost bankrupt to eventually getting a really big contract, and coming across this world of like consulting and coaching and speaking and personal development. And my adoptive mom unfortunately passed away after a 17-year battle with MS, and so I kind of have this thought of like I want to carve out a new path. I want to try to find something of value from the life that I've lived beyond just living it. And so sharing it, speaking about it, giving insights is kind of what called to my heart at the time. And so I started going out into the world and speaking and talking, and over time found my message, found my uniqueness, if that makes sense, which is that dark work concept. Because I'm a guy that I'm really good at doing things without needing a celebration, without needing a cheering section, because I didn't have it growing up. And a lot of people are looking to have that when they get started or when they start building stuff. And to be honest, A lot of the work we do will be silent, solo, misunderstood, ridiculed. It'll be no cheerleaders. Like, yeah, I'm sure you know, there's things you've done that have allowed you to be greatly successful that no one will ever know. You could tell them about it, but they don't get it. And if they do tell you, like, oh, it's like good job, but they're not clapping for you.
Or you're lucky, or like, oh yeah, exactly. They don't fully get it. Nobody really knows
Yeah,
the journey that we've all been through individually.
yeah.
Sometimes
So
we're lucky enough to have somebody by our side or to have a support system. Sometimes we don't, and if it's to be, it's
mhm.
up to me kind of an approach.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be. And so for me, it's making that sexy again. I think nowadays we live in this world, everybody wants to consume information and hire coaches, and then they expect that coach, that information to solve all the problems. And it's like, no, that gives you insight. The problem is solved by your actions, the dark work. And so that's where I spend
So
my time.
explain it to our
Yeah.
audience. When you say dark work, what does that entail? What do you mean when you say that?
So think about it this way. Conceptually, dark work is the work that's unseen and unsexy. It's misunderstood and ridiculed. That's the dark work. Here's why here's why I explain it this way. The goal is not for you to wake up and achieve something. It's to wake up and feel like the kind of person that achieves. So the way I look at it is you cannot attain or sustain a dream or vision above your current identity, your habits, your
Okay, say
patterns, your
that again.
actions.
That's actually priceless. Say that again slowly. You cannot.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Say that again.
Cannot
Let people
attain or sustain a life or vision above your current identity.
above your current identity. Okay.
Because your identity has certain habits, patterns, and actions that are almost like they're instinctual at this point. They just process. You do things. Something happens, you fire off in a certain way. You're triggered. You have just patterns you run. And so, if you want to have something, there's a certain level of a person that operates that has a thing that you want most. If you aren't there yet, you don't get that thing. And the way you get there is not by one day waking up and going, all right, I believe in myself. It's by doing things day after day, tirelessly, to where you and your core of you know you deserve that thing. And if you think about it this way, it's like look at any sports team that's won a championship. I don't care from hockey to basketball to football. None of them won it and then go, oh my gosh, I didn't think I could win. There wasn't surprise on the face. Like it was more like, yeah, you know how hard we worked for this. We had this conversation, this meeting. We there's certain times we could do it. Like they talk about the journey they went through, and what it really is this: it's an experience that is rewiring you. So that elevation of your identity, it's not just you thinking a certain way, like, oh, I'm better. It's literally you get wired neurologically and psychologically different than what you were before. So you believe differently, you process differently, your thoughts function differently. There's some rooms I've stepped into, and I'm just sitting there listening to them talk. I can go, man, I don't think at their level. And you have to like learn how to adapt to that higher level. That's rewiring purely from an experience. You went through something, you felt something, you endured something. Because of that, you're wired differently. And now your identity elevates at a level that can have the things that you want most.
That's beautiful. Um, how do you not give up when you're faced so much adversity? I mean, your level of resilience, and I know you touched like it's just
Yeah,
the
tip of the
surface of
iceberg.
everything that you've been through in life. Why did you never give up? I mean, there were plenty of times you could say, you know what, I'm just so tired, man. I'm
Yeah,
like it's me against the world. I'm like, how did you keep going throughout all the ups and downs? Because you did have successes, and then there were like some,
yeah,
down times, more successes,
yeah.
more down times, and now you're back on top of the world, and you
It's
just
up
came
and
back
down.
from
Yeah,
Sweden. You're traveling the world. You
yeah,
have a beautiful life. What kept you going during the darkest moments when most people would have said, like it's too hard, basically. I can't do it.
yeah.
Done.
Well, I always look back at times in the past when it was like the same feeling. It's never going to get better. And then I remember times after that moment that I've been happy. So I
Mm.
go, all right, well this sucks, right? But I've beat it before, right? I've survived 100% of my hard days. So I just get to action. There's this guy named Turbo. He used to do this thing called American Gladiator, and I had him on a podcast with me one time, and he says, "Action ends suffering."
Yes.
That's
Awesome.
it. So
Yes.
I go, all right, it sucks. This is not a fun thing I'm experiencing right now, but it's not going to be me crying about it that fixes it. Some kind of action has to fix it. So I get an emotion. And then in doing so, I feel more empowered and control. Like when you have the ability to move and groove and create, and you're the one, taking actions, it may not be the first thing you do, but eventually you could take your power back and realize, all right, like this thing didn't do very well, but I have the capacity and the power to fix it and make it better. So execute the power. Don't just have a pity party and cry all day.
Or if you do it, don't cry all day. Do it for half an hour, then pivot and become a navigator and go after your dreams.
Something, man. You got to move though. That's the thing is these things happen. This is life. It's the price of admission. The price of admission of the thing you want is hardship. If not, everybody would have that thing. And so you have to understand it's coming. And when it comes, find a way to move past it. Just small baby actions. It's not always a big overhauling one monstrous push. It's over time, the effort, just day after day after day, to show up and give the effort that day. And then little by little, it turns into something, the emotion changes, and you feel like you're back in power again.
Anthony, thank you for sharing your insights, your life story, your inspirational story. You know, a part of the show is to inspire and then empower people to move into actions, exactly what you talked about. How can our
Mhm.
audience get in touch with you, follow you? If businesses, they need to hire your individuals, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, if you go to darkwork.com, everything's there. We speeches, consulting, all that kind of stuff.
Anthony, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for coming on, my friend. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you for having
Best
me.
of luck, but really live your best life and live your best life now. And you're doing it. And you're a great inspiration to so many people. So thank you, my friend. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. You too.
Wow. Action and suffering. That I've never heard that before, but it's so true. And we talk a lot about this on the show. And when I coach people, in life, it doesn't really matter what we know. What matters is what do we do with what we know. And I think that differentiates people who have found success in their lives from those that continue to suffer and seem to fall short. We can know the right things to do, but what really matters, what will we choose today? And I guess the call to action after listening to Anthony is, what is the one thing that you can implement in your life today? The key is to do it consistently. It's not like we do it for 2 or 3 days and then like, well, that's enough. No, that can become second nature in essence. That will lead us to success. For me, it's move into action. Start feeling down. Yeah. And I'm okay. I know we're all human beings that from time to time we feel like a victim, poor me, and so on. But it's okay to do it. Don't do it more than half an hour. And then pivot, get up, and do something because it's in the action that our lives get transformed. Again, I want to thank you for your loyalty. I want to thank you for all your support. And can't wait to see you next week when we'll have another amazing guest. Until then, have a wonderful week wherever you are. Thank you.